be able to create the users ourselves from our Flutter application. So let's go ahead and get started. So in our Flutter application, first things first is to create our layers, right? So inside of our lib folder, usually I personally create maybe a directory called src, right, source. You can call it, you can use features because basically the features will be in here. So our application, when you get an application, you have to split it into different features, right? So for example, we have the authentication feature, we could have the chat feature, we can have the hosts feature or something like that. We just break them down into different features. I spoke more on this in the video that I referenced at the beginning. The video link will be in the description. We'll also put up on the screen as well. So let's go ahead and create our features, right? Or you can create source, right? As almost every public project does. So inside of the source, we start by creating our first layer, new directory. Let's create our first feature will be the authentication feature, right? Inside of the authentication feature, we're going to create a new direct file. I'm just going to do this at once so I don't have to waste time creating all the layers. So remember that we always start from the domain layer, right? So this is what we're basically going to do. We're going to create a user and then fetch every user that we've created and display them in the UI. So on tap of a button, we can add a new user and so on and so forth. All right, so let's go ahead and add the domain layer. So in the domain layer, we will have our entities, right? In our entities, we will have the user data. So we have the user entity. So let's go ahead and see what our user has. So let's try and create a new resource. So you can see that a user has ID, created that, the name and the avatar. And these, I think these will come in the same format when we're fetching them. So ID created that, name and avatar. Right, so we will have the class user, and class user will have I think the ID is an integer. So because I think we're using an SQL database, so yeah, it should be an integer. So integer ID, we have final string created at, I think it's a string because I mean it looks like, I know it's a string. So name, let's go ahead and also add the final string name, and finally final string avatar. All right, so after that, let's create the constructor. In here, we will require this .id, required dot created that, required this dot. No. We can make this to be a date time object, but this is just for this is just a simple setup. So let's just keep it as a string instead of changing it to a date time. Let's just keep it that way. And then we finally have name and avatar. Right, so this is it. So this is set. But now there's an issue, right? So usually for test-driven development, even without test-driven development, we will need to be able to know when a user or equate users or equate our objects, right? So in Dart, generally Dart uses referential equality, right? So which means that when you check if a user, so if in here, if in my void main, I had final user 1 as a user, and I created ID, this, that, right? And the ID, let me change that to 1, and I can do the same for user 2, right? if in Dart I said I wanted to check for this and say, do you know what? Let's go over to Dartpad and do this so that we can dartpad.dev, boom, void main. In fact, let me copy this entire thingy. Right, so yes, so let me move this below. Format. Yeah, so if I went ahead and said print user1 equal to user2, because we know that this isn't equal, right? User1 isn't the same as user2, right? Because their IDs are different. I mean, everything else is the same. But let's go ahead and check that. You can see it says false. And what if we actually change something in here, right? So what if we changed user1, right, and checked, we change user2 to have the same data as user1, and we hit run, we can see it's true, right? Now that's all great because it's detecting that these two are the same, right?